At 6:12 a.m. in the ice corridor of El Toro Glacier at 16,132 feet, the sound that broke the silence wasn't a scream. It was the sharp snap of rope under constant load. Short, precise, wrong. The air was too still, too thin, with no wind strong enough to justify any spontaneous movement. The wall ahead was a vertical white blade that absorbed sound and returned only cold. Julian Ibarra was about 6 feet above his last ice screw, secured to his own system. Dynamic rope, locked carabiner, properly tied knot, back up in place. Matias held the belay below, crampons set in hard ice, feeling the steady weight of a man climbing. Nothing was failing, nothing was shifting. At 6:13 a.m. the radio crackled and his final words came through clearly. "I'm anchored. Don't move." What followed was not a fall. The rope tightened and began feeding in. It didn't drop. It didn't rip free. It fed inch by inch through the belay device against Matias's hand, against the ice, against gravity. As if something above were pulling Julian into the wall. Matias locked off. The belay device burned through his glove. His body shook under the load. But the rope didn't accelerate like it would in a fall. It obeyed a constant force, silent, steady, straight. Over the radio came the sound of fabric scraping against ice, labored breathing, then nothing. At 6:15 a.m., the line stopped. When Matias climbed up to the last anchor, the mountain was intact, the carabiner locked, the knot secure, the ice unfractured, and the rope disappearing into a fissure too narrow for a human arm, smooth, dark, with no splintering, no broken edge, as if the glacier had sealed the man inside and left only the tether behind. To this day, the body has never come out, but the rope kept reacting. Before we continue, hit like, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and comment what city you're watching from. Because what you're about to see isn't a mountain accident story. It's a case where the disappearance remained physically active after it happened. The case of the climber who vanished. While still tied to his own rope, took place in an isolated corridor of El Toro Glacier, on the border between Chile and Argentina. A zone where the ice forms compact walls, no caves, no loose snow, no internal voids. There, when something falls, it leaves a trace. When something breaks, it leaves a fracture. When someone disappears, it leaves a body. Here, none of that happened. Julian Ibarra was properly anchored, system checked, redundant, and secure. His partner held the line. The wall was stable. The weather was clear. And yet, in less than 3 minutes, the man ceased to be where the rope insisted he was. The team found the system intact, the ice intact, the equipment intact, and the rope feeding into a crack not marked on the route, too narrow for human passage, too smooth for recent rupture, as if the glacier had absorbed the body without altering its own structure. In the days that followed, the physical tether did not remain still. It tightened, it moved, it returned fragments, and for a moment, it nearly returned part of the vanished climber himself. What you're about to see isn't the search for someone lost. It's the record of a body that crossed a physical boundary without opening a passage, and of a rope that remained connected to whatever stayed on the other side. The El Toro Glacier has no open cavities in that sector. That's documented in guidebooks, aerial imagery, and in the memory of climbers who have crossed that corridor before. It's a continuous blade of dense, angled ice, compressed by decades of pressure. Sound there doesn't carry like it does on rock. It dies quickly, absorbed by the cold mass. The air is thin enough to slice your breath short. Reflected light flattens depth perception. It's a place where the surface exists completely, without an inside. At 5:38 a.m., Julian left camp already wearing his harness over thermal layers, carabiners organized, ice screws clipped in order. He wasn't inexperienced. He didn't improvise systems. Matias followed behind, belay device rigged, rope clean. Camila and Hernan stayed at the advanced camp with the radio open and partial visual of the corridor. The sky was clear, no recent snowfall. The ice was hard, compact, uniform in texture. Nothing loose. Nothing shifting. At 5:51 a.m., Julian's first transmission came through with minimal delay. Not to Matias, who was within 60 feet, but to the camp radio. Camilla noted a continuous hiss beneath his voice, a background sound absent from earlier communications that morning. It wasn't typical terrain interference. Line of sight was open. The noise resembled distant scraping, steady, almost mechanical. She logged it. Unidentified background noise. At 6:03 a.m., they reached the corridor's base. Matias recorded a few seconds with his chest camera. The footage shows the vertical ice plane rising like a wall without variation, 2 old anchor points from a previous attempt still embedded, and the void below compressed into white perspective. No visible fissures, no deep shadows, no entry anywhere. At 6:10 a.m., Julian began climbing first as planned. Slow progression, front points firm, body axis close to the wall. Matias managed the belay with his left hand on the device and right on the live rope. The transmitted weight felt normal, progressive tension, small oscillations consistent with steps on hard ice. Nothing irregular, no sudden jerk, no slip. The glacier was silent. At 6:12 a.m., the snap came. Not ice breaking, not metal failing, rope under sudden localized load. Matias felt it before he processed it. The line went straight, vertical, as if something above had taken the full weight. The radio opened with Julian's last words. "I'm anchored. Don't move." What followed did not match any fall pattern in ice climbing. The rope began feeding through the belay device. It didn't drop. It didn't accelerate. It didn't vibrate like mass in free fall. It fed at constant speed against Matias's grip, against the locked device, against the resistance of his crampons biting into ice. Continuous traction, as if the anchor point above had become an invisible winch. Matias locked off fully, drove both tools into the wall, braced with both hands. The device burned his glove. His body absorbed the load. The rope kept moving, inch by inch. Over the radio came forced breathing and fabric scraping under compression. Then, silence. At 6:15 a.m., the rope stopped. Matias climbed immediately to the last ice screw. The system was intact. Carabiner locked, knot tied correctly, no metal deformation, no impact damage, no fresh fractures in the ice. And the rope, extending upward, disappearing into a fissure. The opening measured less than 1.5 inches. Smooth, no broken edges, no shattered ice around it. A dark vertical seam, continuous, like a stitched line in the glacier's body. Too narrow for a hand, too narrow for an arm, too narrow for human passage. The rope fed into it. Matias pulled. Nothing. He jerked sharply. No give. Uniform resistance. It felt as if the rope were secured to another rigid surface beyond the visible wall. He called Julian. No response. Called again. The radio channel remained open. Mute. At 6:18 a.m., Camila and Hernan began climbing with rescue equipment. The cold at that point felt harsher. The ice reflected direct light and returned motionless air. Footsteps died quickly in the corridor. When they reached the last anchor, they found exactly what Matthias described. Correct system, complete absence of a body, rope entering a fissure that should not exist in a continuous ice plane. Camilla inspected the surrounding surface. No stains, no fibers, no fabric fragments, no superficial alterations suggesting a human mass had passed through. Hernan examined the opening. The inner edge was polished, compact, without microfracture. It did not look freshly broken. It resembled an old formation, but it appeared in no prior record of the route. Matthias pulled again. The rope yielded less than 0.5 millimeter and locked. No residual elasticity typical of a fall. It was fixation. At 6:27 a.m., Hernan placed marking tape on the rope about a foot from the edge to monitor movement. The marker remained stable. The surrounding ice showed no detectable thermal change to the touch. Julian's radio, still attached to his harness, transmitted open-channel silence. No voice, no static, just an active line. At 6:41 a.m., the team decided to wait for formal rescue before cutting or widening anything. The priority shifted to preserving the only material evidence, the rope connected to whatever was beyond the seam. While they waited, Matthias kept his hand on the line. Later, he described something not visible on video: the absence of weight, not lightness, absence. The rope did not pull like a suspended body. It did not vibrate with mass. It was simply neutral tension, constant, as if fixed to a point outside the wall's geometry. At 7:12 a.m., the first micro-event occurred. Without being touched, the rope vibrated once in the exposed segment, short, lateral, and stopped. It did not originate from the fissure. It did not travel from the belay device. It appeared mid-line. Matthias released reflexively. The tension returned to neutral. The tape marker did not move. At 7:46 a.m., the rescue helicopter passed overhead, unable to land. The ground team was still hours away. The glacier remained unmoving. Silence resumed its absorption. The fissure stayed narrow, dark, unchanged. At 8:03 a.m., the tape marker shifted. It did not slide sideways. It did not fall. It sank inward by a fraction of an inch toward the fissure. The rope had advanced on its own. They measured, confirmed, photographed. No one had touched it. No jerk, no sound. The material linked to Julian was active, moving into a space the glacier did not open. The entire corridor remained the same, the wall intact, the light unchanged, the air motionless. When the rescue team reached the last ice screw at 9:27 a.m., the corridor was already under direct sunlight. The ice reflected a flat, depthless white. The fissure remained exactly where Matthias had indicated, a dark vertical seam barely over an inch wide, too narrow for human penetration. Julian's system was still intact, carabiner locked, not correct, rope feeding inward. The rescue leader, Alonso Vega, leaned close to the opening. The air there felt colder, as if the glacier's mass absorbed heat unevenly at that point. He ran the edge of a metal spatula along the seam. The blade met no irregularity. The surface was smooth, continuous, without splintering or fresh fracture. Nothing had been broken open by the passage of a body. At 9:34 a.m., they initiated the first traction protocol. 2 rescuers took the belay with reinforced gloves. Vega ordered gradual minimal force. The rope responded with microscopic give, less than 1/2 inch, and stopped. No internal cracking from ice, no mass vibration. The resistance was uniform, as though the line were secured to another rigid plane beyond the visible wall. While documenting, Camilla noticed something near Hernan's tape marker: 2 parallel contact lines in the frost. The original tape mark sat in one position. A second, fresh indentation lay a few millimeters beside it. The rope had changed angle during a period when no one had touched it. Measurement confirmed. Photographs confirmed. No contact had occurred. At 9:51 a.m., they inserted a rigid metal probe alongside the rope, advancing about 7 inches into the fissure. The probe met smooth resistance. No cavity, no tunnel, continuous solid ice. Yet the rope continued disappearing there. The contradiction was complete. The glacier denied space. The tether affirmed continuity. At 10:08 a.m., they introduced a flexible inspection camera. The cable slid in beside the rope. The initial image showed translucent ice, uniform compression. The rope appeared, then vanished from the image in segments, as if passing through zones with no visual registration. It wasn't bending. It wasn't coiling. It simply ceased to appear and reappeared farther in, intact. When they advanced deeper, the video feed fragmented into blocky distortions. They withdrew the device. The camera housing bore faint lateral scoring marks, as if compressed sideways against something rigid. No cavity had been visualized. At 10:41 a.m., they decided to cut a lateral inspection channel roughly 8 inches below the fissure to intercept the supposed internal path of the rope. They removed ice in clean rectangular blocks. The slab dropped. Behind it, solid, uninterrupted mass. No void, no channel, no space through which a rope could physically pass. The line, however, remained tensioned at the original seam. The corridor was intact. The ice denied passage. The rope affirmed passage. At 11:22 a.m., the second micro-event occurred. The rope vibrated, not longitudinally, but laterally, at 3 separate points simultaneously, near the belay device, mid-segment, and at the fissure's edge. The motion did not propagate along the line. It appeared at all 3 points at once and lasted less than a second. Matthias withdrew his hand. Vega ordered silence. The ice emitted no sound. The rope returned to neutral tension. At 11:47 a.m., sunlight raised the surface temperature slightly. The fissure's edge remained colder to the touch than the surrounding ice. Camilla measured with a contact thermometer, a narrow gradient roughly 3 degrees colder at the seam. The interior could not be measured. The thermal anomaly stayed confined to the border. At 12:03 p.m., a new event. The tape marker sank another millimeter inward. It did not slide. It was not visibly pulled. The rope had advanced without perceptible motion. The new position was measured, confirmed, photographed. No external force had been applied. The line remained active. At 12:16 p.m., Matthias requested to take the belay again. He wanted to feel the tension. Vega allowed it. Matthias gripped the rope with both hands. His statement was recorded immediately. "There's no weight. There's resistance without mass." Like holding something anchored outside the wall. At that exact moment, Julian's radio, still clipped to the recovered harness and confirmed without battery, emitted a single sound. Fabric scraping under compression. Short. Dry. Everyone heard it. The device had no power source. Silence followed. At 12:42 p.m., the third micro-event. The rope advanced outward by roughly half an inch against its prior inward trend and stopped. No object emerged. It was the first return movement since the disappearance. The ice markings shifted accordingly. Confirmed. At 1:10 p.m., Vega ordered passive observation. No one would touch the rope for 20 minutes. The objective was to observe spontaneous behavior. For 17 minutes, nothing occurred. At 1:27 p.m., the rope advanced inward again by about 1.5 millimeters, slow and continuous without sound. The tape followed. The ice remained intact. The tether demonstrated independent activity. At 2:02 p.m., they removed Julian's harness from the system for isolated inspection. The knot was untied. The carabiner opened. The harness lowered. Structurally intact. Webbing uncut. Stitching undisturbed. The radio dead at the shoulder clip. No sign of extreme load. No evidence of a body being forced through. The absence was clean. At 2:37 p.m., while Camilla photographed the harness, the rope at the fissure vibrated again. The same triple simultaneous oscillation. All eyes turned. Nothing emerged. The line returned to neutral. The tape marker did not move. At 3:11 p.m., a detail appeared briefly at the inner edge. A darker zone, as if a non-ice surface became visible under angled light. Vega shifted his flashlight. The zone receded. It was not shadow. The light angle remained constant. 2 witnesses logged the observation. At 4:08 p.m., the fourth micro-event. The rope advanced outward by nearly an inch without traction. It stopped. No object accompanied it. The marking shifted. Confirmed. The pattern was now clear. The tether not only entered, it returned. The glacier remained intact. No widening fissure. No fracture. No cavity. And the line connected to the absent climber continued to react. At 5:02 p.m., Vega declared they would maintain night anchorage. No cutting. No additional excavation. The phenomenon was active and material. The priority shifted to observation. The sun dipped behind the ridge. The white light turned blue. The wall lost depth. Cold rose from the ice. Silence resumed its compression. And shortly before midnight, something would emerge from the fissure for the first time. At 11:58 p.m., the corridor was in total shadow. Not darkness, opacity. Moonlight reflected off the upper walls and returned a flat, depthless glow, as if the ice erased distance. The advanced camp sat a few yards from the anchor point. Wind moved high along the ridge, but down in the corridor the air was still. Compressed silence. Hernan and rescuer Torres were on watch. Vega slept with the radio open. Camilla rested with her notebook beside her. The rope remained fixed, tensioned, marked, documented. The fissure stayed narrow, smooth, dark. At 12:07 a.m. something fell. It wasn't ejected, it wasn't thrown. It dropped as if released. A dark fragment appeared at the mouth of the fissure and fell onto the ice beside the carabiner. Torres illuminated it. It was a narrow strip of webbing with a stitched edge and a specific abrasion mark. Camilla recognized it immediately, an internal gear loop from a climbing harness. The violation was immediate. The harness examined earlier that afternoon was intact. They photographed it, measured it, collected it with sterile forceps. The cut was clean, straight edge, no fraying, no tensile tearing, no ice adhered, no blood. It was a separated piece of equipment emerging from inside solid ice. At 12:19 a.m. the rope vibrated, not along its length, not from the belay, not from the fissure. The oscillation appeared at 3 points simultaneously and ceased in less than a second. Torres stepped back. Hernan kept his eyes on the seam. The glacier did not crack. The air did not move. The rope returned to neutral tension. At 12:24 a.m., a second object partially emerged, tangled in the rope's braid. A small metal ring with engraved markings. Camilla identified it. A secondary keeper ring used for lightweight accessory carabiners, the type Julian clipped to his shoulder for a small action camera. That ring had not been present on the harness recovered earlier. The pattern established itself. The glacier was returning components of equipment in states inconsistent with the examined configuration. At 12:31 a.m., Vega was awakened. He didn't ask for theories. He observed the ground, the fissure, the rope, and ordered continuous recording, no contact, a 6-foot perimeter. If something emerged, it had to be captured without interference. The phenomenon appeared responsive to touch, and possibly to observation itself. At 1:12 a.m., a third return. A short segment of thin cord, different color from the main rope, slid outward about an inch and hung. Camilla identified it, the accessory cord from an auto-block backup knot. But the auto-block had been present on the harness examined earlier. Now a second cord of identical type had emerged. The ice remained intact. The fissure did not widen. The rope stayed under tension. And yet, fragments appeared as if the interior were returning pieces from an alternate configuration of the same system. At 1:40 a.m., Vega tested observation response. Everyone stepped back. No direct light aimed at the fissure for 5 minutes. Only a fixed infrared camera remained active. For 4 minutes, nothing. In the 5th minute, the rope advanced outward nearly 2 inches, slow, steady, as if pushed from within. It stopped. When Vega stepped forward and illuminated the seam again, the movement ceased instantly. The reaction was measurable. The phenomenon altered behavior when not directly observed. At 2:03 a.m., Hernan noticed a change in the inner surface of the fissure, a darker zone that seemed to absorb light. He held the beam steady. The zone receded by a fraction of an inch and vanished. It was not shadow. The light angle did not change, logged as internal optical shift with recession. At 2:27 a.m., the sound came. Not from the radio, from the air. 2 short inhalations, dry, as if breath were trapped behind rigid material. Camilla froze. Torres didn't move. Vega remained silent. The sound stopped immediately. No vapor plume, no heat signature at the seam. The thermometer still read colder at the fissure edge than surrounding ice, but the sound existed. At 3:05 a.m., the rope lost enough tension to form a slight arc, the first real slack since the disappearance. Vega authorized minimal traction testing. 2 rescuers, simple pulley, short pulls, pause, record. The rope came 5 centimeters, stopped. 2 more, stopped. At the 8th centimeter, the triple vibration occurred. Vega halted the test. Net gain, 9 centimeters outward. At 3:42 a.m., the 4th element fell. A small translucent ice fragment, clearer than surrounding surface ice, containing a thin, aligned layer of microbubbles, suggesting formation under different thermal conditions. Inside it was a curved, dark filament. Camilla collected it in a sterile bag and cracked the ice carefully. It was a short strand of dark human hair. No root, no tissue, no skin. The mountain had returned biological material encapsulated in foreign ice. At 4:10 a.m., activity ceased abruptly. The rope stabilized at a lower tension, as if whatever was beyond had slackened. The inventory of returns that night was complete. Cut harness webbing, metal accessory ring, auto block cord segment, ice fragment containing hair, all incompatible with the intact equipment already examined, all emerging through a seam that never widened. When dawnlight touched the ridge at 6:21 a.m., Vega assembled the team and outlined the plan. At noon, With warmer surface conditions, they would attempt a final controlled full recovery using dual pulleys and continuous low-force traction. Fixed recording. No sudden load. If anything was coming out, it would come then. Matthias stared at the fissure too long. Not grief. Recognition. They were no longer dealing with an accident. And near midday, the glacier would push the case to its limit, returning a fragment large enough to be instantly recognized and empty enough to destroy any attempt to normalize what they were witnessing. By 11:47 a.m., sunlight had warmed the corridor's surface, just enough to soften the outer skin of the ice, not its structure. It was the kind of heat that loosens millimeters while the interior remains compressed like stone. The reflected light washed everything in flat white. The fissure, however, stayed dark, narrow, absorbing the beam of a flashlight without returning reflection. The rope was marked, filmed, redundantly anchored. Vega positioned the pulley system with obsessive precision. No sudden force, no load spikes, only controlled progression. There was one objective: bring whatever lay beyond the seam as far as the ice would allow, without tearing, without cutting, without forcing a narrative. Any excessive force risked destroying the only material link that remained. At 11:52 a.m., the first traction cycle began. 30% load, 20 seconds. Pause. The rope came 3 centimeters. No cracking. No falling vibration. Uniform resistance, as if sliding through a narrow channel. The marking on the ice deepened slightly. The fixed camera captured everything. Vega ordered the second cycle. 2 more centimeters. The air at the seam felt colder again. Camilla pressed a contact thermometer 2 centimeters from the opening. The fissure's edge maintained the same colder gradient as before, even as surrounding ice softened under direct sun. The border remained rigid, cold, unyielding. At 11:56 a.m. during the third cycle, the rope vibrated mid-line, the triple simultaneous oscillation. Vega halted immediately. Silence. Observation. Then it appeared. Not expelled. Not forced. It was drawn to the threshold like fabric compressed through a narrow passage. A sleeve emerged at the inner edge of the fissure, collapsed, folded over itself. Dark gray. Thin, reflective strip at the cuff. Specific interior stitching. Matthias recognized it before anyone spoke. It was Julian's jacket. The sleeve advanced millimeters and stopped. No tearing, no ice adhered, no blood. Clean fabric, compressed by the narrowness, held in place by the rope. The ice edge did not fracture, it did not widen. It was as if the glacier permitted only that. Surface and tether, nothing more. Vega did not pull. He ordered microtraction, 1 millimeter at a time. At 11:59 a.m., 1 millimeter. The sleeve advanced. The cuff opened slightly. The interior was visible. Empty. No hand, no volume, no arm within. The sleeve collapsed into itself as if it had never contained anything. Camilla angled her light. The fabric texture returned clearly. The interior remained hollow. Another millimeter. The sleeve came slightly farther. Still empty. The rope maintained neutral resistance. The surrounding ice remained intact. At 12:02 p.m., Camilla extended long forceps to lightly touch the cuff edge. The contact was minimal, almost symbolic. The sleeve resisted briefly from within. Elastic resistance. As if something on the other side were holding it. Then it withdrew 2 millimeters inward against applied traction. Vega ordered stop. At that instant, the cuff inflated. Not wind, not loose movement. It inflated into cylindrical form, as if an invisible forearm filled it from within, for less than a second. Then, collapsed. Simultaneously, the rope vibrated in 3 points, and the sound came again. A single, short inhalation at the ice edge. Not through the radio, through the air. Everything happened too fast for control. The sleeve advanced on its own 3 millimeters, as if seeking exit. In that minimal motion, a small scuff mark along the cuff seam became visible, a mark Matthias recognized from a prior climb when the sleeve snagged on a screw, and he had pulled it free himself. Absolute identification. It was Julian's jacket, and it was empty. At 12:06 p.m., Vega authorized the final centimeter. Minimal traction applied. The sleeve came 1 millimeter and was taken back. No tear, no snag, no friction. The fabric retracted into the fissure with impossible smoothness, continuous, as if crossing a surface that nullified resistance. In less than a second, it vanished. At the same moment, the rope lost roughly 2 inches of slack and returned to prior tension, as if something beyond had recalibrated with precision. Absolute silence. The ice edge remained intact. No fracture, no splinter, no widened opening. The sleeve had been shown and denied in the same gesture. At 12:10 p.m., Matthias stepped forward reflexively. Vega gripped his shoulder and pulled him back. Not authority, containment. No one wanted to touch the seam after watching fabric react to contact. At 12:18 p.m., something worse. Under angled light, for a fraction of a second, a surface that was not ice appeared at the inner edge. Not a full shape. Not a complete form. Skin. A dull tone pressed against the threshold, as if something behind it tried to cross but could not. The moment was brief. 3 people saw it. No camera captured it. The surface vanished. The rope vibrated once. Stopped. Vega ended the attempt. Operational limits had been exceeded. The phenomenon did not obey external traction and responded to proximity. The preservation plan was declared. Maintain anchorage until late afternoon, then cut the rope approximately 8 inches from the fissure, seal the external segment, and descend. Not surrender. Containment. At 5:03 p.m., before the cut, the rope made its final spontaneous movement on the glacier. It advanced outward 3 centimeters, slow and steady, and stopped. No object emerged. 2 minutes later, it retreated inward 1 centimeter and stabilized, as if measuring what it could return. At 5:21 p.m., Vega made the cut. The blade passed through nylon without abnormal resistance. The external segment was retrieved, sealed, labeled, photographed. The portion remaining in the fissure retracted 2 millimeters and stopped as if released from load. The seam remained smooth, silent. The glacier retained the rest. But the case did not end with descent, because the segment of rope removed from the ice, outside the glacier, would continue to react. Not as memory, not as coincidence. As an active tether to whatever remained beyond the seam. And the final chapter would have to surpass the empty sleeve with something more unsettling. Proof that the disappearance could press through matter even far from the mountain. The rope segment cut from the glacier, exactly 8 inches between blade and fissure, was brought down sealed, numbered, photographed at every stage. Protocol was followed with rigid precision. At this point, there was no search. There was evidence. Chain of custody remained continuous. Vega transferred it to Hernan at 6:02 p.m. Hernan delivered it to the intermediate post at 8:47 p.m. The material arrived at the technical shelter in Valle del Toro at 11:19 p.m. Up to that moment, the nylon was only an extension of an impossible event. The next violation occurred on flat ground, away from the ice, under stable light. At 9:14 a.m. the following day, the sterile bag was opened on a metal workbench in a closed room. Present: Camilla, equipment technician Sergio Paredes, and Alonso Vega. The segment was placed without tension. Measurement confirmed: 7.8 inches. The cut end was clean. The other end, the one that had faced the fissure, retained intact braiding. No fraying, no ice residue, no sign of extreme load. Ordinary nylon, impossible tether. At 9:27 a.m., while Sergio photographed macro images of the weave, the segment moved. It did not roll. It did not vibrate. It slid nearly a millimeter in a straight line across the metal surface and stopped. No one touched it. No airflow. No external vibration. The video captured continuous displacement without acceleration or inertia. The object simply repositioned itself. Camilla called for silence. Vega ordered everyone back. The nylon remained still for 38 seconds. At 9:28:11 a.m., it slid again, another fraction of an inch. Stopped. At 9:30 a.m., they marked its outline with tape. The segment remained within the boundary. At 9:36, Sergio approached with forceps without making contact. No reaction. At 9:37:02, the nylon curved subtly at its center, a brief contraction, as if internal tension passed through it. The curvature lasted less than a second and ceased. Nylon at rest does not self-contract on a flat surface. The record stood. At 9:42 a.m., Camilla positioned the segment near the remaining coil of the main rope, without contact. The fissure-facing end rotated slightly on its own, less than a degree, aligning toward the matching braid orientation. No touch, no magnetic explanation. Material alignment without contact. At 9:50 a.m., Vega ordered immediate isolation in a rigid transparent container, sealed. The segment was placed inside. Lid closed. Seal confirmed. At 9:53:17 a.m., the fissure-facing end pressed against the inner wall of the container and remained in contact for 2 seconds, as if something on the other side were pushing through the material. The nylon did not deform permanently. The pressure ceased. The segment drifted back to center. At 10:01 a.m., Sergio noticed a micro-abrasion near the fissure end, not present in field photographs. Less than a millimeter. He brought the macro lens closer. At 10:01:43, a dark filament appeared between the fibers, not on top, not beside, between. A single human hair, fine and curved, emerging through intact synthetic braid. No tear, no gap. The filament advanced half a millimeter and stopped. The container remained sealed. No tool touched it. No air entered. At 10:04 a.m., the hair receded on its own and vanished back between the fibers. The braid returned to its original configuration. Video confirmed emergence and withdrawal. The only material reading possible. The connection to the fissure persisted through the object, and matter crossed the weave without rupture. At 10:12 a.m., the container was transferred to the shelter's cold chamber, vibration-free, temperature-controlled. At 10:22:09 a.m., internal camera footage showed the segment shift nearly a millimeter, orienting toward the wall facing roughly in the geographic direction of the glacier. The motion stopped. No object emerged. At 10:31 a.m., Camilla, standing outside the chamber, reported a tactile sensation in her left palm, the feeling of a taut line sliding beneath the skin without physical contact. No mark appeared. At 10:31:44 a.m., the fissure-facing end pressed against the inner wall again for a second. Then stopped. At 11:05 a.m., they prepared the container for transport to the regional laboratory. Final visual inspection before sealing. The nylon was neutral. At 11:06:12 a.m., the maximum event outside the glacier occurred. The fissure-facing end deformed, not elastically, not under external pull. The nylon braid opened microscopically, not tearing, parting from within. Through that impossible opening, something pressed outward. Not a full form, not an object. Pressure. Like fabric or skin compressed against material that would not allow passage. The opening held for less than a second. The braid returned to perfect structure, no rupture, no broken fiber. The event existed only in the captured instant. Camilla pulled her hand back from the container as if burned. Vega said nothing. Sergio stared at the exact point where the weave had yielded and restored itself. At 11:20 a.m., the container was sealed. At 11:47, it left the shelter. During transport along the trail, no occurrence. At 4:03 p.m. at the intermediate station, seal integrity was confirmed. The container remained intact. The segment now rested with its fissure end pressed continuously against the lid, a position not shown in earlier footage. Internal repositioning without breach. At 6:22 p.m., inside the vehicle beyond the mountain range, the container emitted a single sound, fabric scraping against a rigid surface. All occupants heard it. The nylon remained pressed against the lid. No further motion occurred through arrival at the laboratory. In the days that followed, stored in a dry vault under continuous observation, the segment did not move again. The connection did not disappear. It simply stopped displaying itself. The case of Julian Ibarra does not close because there is no point at which the system resolves. The glacier retained the body without fracture. The rope remained connected to what lay beyond the seam. Fragments of equipment and biological material returned in configurations incompatible with the intact system. And far from the mountain, the nylon opened from within, as if the disappearance continued attempting to pass through matter. Julian did not fall. He was not removed. He was not recovered. He remains where the rope continues to assert he is. If you made it this far, hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and comment what city you're watching from. Because this isn't a mountain accident. It's a physical tether that never closed.